Alright, people, alright, let's get this show on the road. What I have to always do first of all is get this shared to start off with. So, where is we, people? Where is we? Alright, let's see. Okay, just people logging in. Un momento, por favor. Huh? What's this? Why am I... That's odd, it's not... Oh, right, there it is. I thought for a moment it wasn't letting me share it. Just be with you guys. Right, so that's good. Put this on silent. Don't want to be disturbing all of you. Alaikum assalam. Right, we've got people in the house, people. We've got people on air. Alright, so let's begin. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa. Wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada. Wa man bihudahu mihtada. Wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa. Wa ba'd. Fa salamullahi alaykum wa rahmatuhu ta'ala wa barakatuh. Right, so what have we got? What should I be... I'm just thinking... What I ought to do is be able to view the comments as well in a more detailed... Whoa, look at that. I don't want to disrupt anything with... Yeah, that'll be good. Actually, I could leave this running. Look at the technology, people. The technology. I could leave that running there whilst I check the questions. I could do with about 3-4 different screens right here. Just like one, like... Alright, like... Yes, that would just be super cool. God, I have to say I'm actually... Oh, what's this? Oh, sorry, I get distracted. Gadgets. I just saw a gadget on Facebook and I got distracted. Did you see that? See how easily I can get distracted. Aisha, well, that's it. You see, multi-screens, it's the way forward. See, if gadgets are like... I could be doing anything and gadgets would be like... Gadgets. I don't know what that is. It's some kind of inbuilt... But you see, that's weird because gadgets are not... I'm just thinking, what part of our intrinsic psyche would draw us so strongly to gadgets? Farhan, alaykum assalam. Whatever it is. Yeah, I think there's a few guys that are actually so... Quite a few, I think. Guys are mad about gadgets. I think some guys. I don't think so many of my mates, but... Allah. You see, does it... Can the show even begin without a sip? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, people. What does he say? Unki guzarishat se ghabra ke pee gaya. Let's take some of these questions. I have to say, first of all, I'm a bit... Abdul, assalamu alaikum, tasharrafna, ahlan wa sahlan, habibi wa akhway. Right there. I have to say, I'm a bit distressed, actually. Unlike me to be a bit distressed, but I'm a bit distressed. I just watched something on Facebook. And it kind of... I wasn't expecting it, so I suppose if you're expecting something, then you can be all psyched up for it, and sometimes you're just glancing through things and you're not expecting them. And there's been this tragic, this brutal murder in India, but of some bodybuilder called Naveed Pathan, and somebody was sharing something, but there's actual footage of it. I was flicking through just as you do with Facebook, and I ended up on this thing, and I just played it, and oh my God, I swear, ya salam. I'm tormented by what I saw. Like, for God's sake, man, what has become of people? Ruthlessly, a mob. And this guy was actually, I just saw pictures of him there. A bodybuilder, I think he'd won awards in India, and like a decent guy, like he looks like a solid person. And they was this mob with swords hacking away. Bloody hell, it shocked me. Like I thought what are they doing in this? Bloody hell, even after he's dead, they're hacking away with the... What is wrong with India? Seriously, what has happened to India, goddammit? It's a shame, man. It's apparently he was a gangster. Okay, he may have been a gangster. I don't know whether he was a gangster or not, but the level of hatred that people are, emitting, and even whether he's a gangster or not, but I don't know the person, but I just saw that the way the guy was even dead, and they were still going in, and ya salam, wallahi, like it makes you think the reasons over which people fight and commit crimes, like they're driven by things, ain't they? They're driven by like retaliation, or I suppose vengeance, or I suppose people are robbing people, or there's that kind of crime. And then there's like this kind of hate crimes, and it doesn't make any sense, because people can just live their normal lives. Like you see, there's a difference if somebody is interfering in your life and making it kind of all difficult and people react. But you have, in hate crimes, people are just disturbed by other people's existence. Like their existence is bothering them. For God's sake, let's just digest that for a moment. Their existence is bothering them, not the fact that they are bothering them. And this is the era that we are in. Ya salam. Yes. Serious. It's sad, man. Honestly, you think, what kind of a life, how did these people live with themselves? But I suppose, anyway, enough of... let's take some questions. What's your intake on pledging allegiance to a spiritual mentor by Mu'ainuddin Chekal? Actually, what have I got the multiple screens for? What have I got these? Mu'ainuddin Chekaliya. What protein do you take? I take any kind of protein I can get. Okay. So... right now, what gel do you use? Faisal al-Katibuddin. Kamal karte ho yaar. What kind? I just use this, what's it called actually? Glands or something. I pick it up from my local hairdressers, who's Dino's in Birmingham. Right, so what's my intake? And then Sham has asked a question on Al-Aqsa situation at the moment. Okay, let's take the Al-Aqsa thing, since we were speaking about something very serious. And you see, the Al-Aqsa situation, all Muslims feel the pain of what is going on in al-Aqsa. And it's tragic because it's exactly what I just spoke about. It's hate crimes, and like in India, they're state-sponsored or at least state-sanctioned. So the state kind of turns if it's not fully endorsed, like in the state of Israel, the illegal occupying state of Israel, they are full-on involved in a lot of the tragedies, maybe not all, but a lot of the tragedies, they fully, perpetrate them. But where they don't perpetrate, they still support, they kind of, or sanction that, do it, what the hell, you understand? And you should, it's shocking because it comes back to that thing that I'm speaking about, the same thing about India and the right-wing kind of, the whole Hindutva kind of extreme fascist movement and sanctioning, with the BJP sanctioning these things. What is wrong with people? It's the hatred that has consumed them. And it's amazing, like there's a poem which I've read before once about hatred, this kind of hasad and this kind of, the poet says that lillahi darul hasadi ma a'dala bada'a bi sahibihi faqatala. That that poetic justice in this hatred that Allah has placed is that the person who carries it, it will begin with them and it will end with their destruction. Like it will be the death of them in the end. And that's Faisal, okay, let's stick to these questions, not so much on the lifting. I gotta hit the gym after this. I've had 3 days now, 2-3 days abstinence from the gym, and that's like borderline kufr for me. So but this thing of al-Aqsa, it's a shame, and there's very little, unfortunately, Muslims can do beyond raising an awareness, which we are doing. And there's very little, I think. You see, the countries around in the Middle East are not really very supportive at a state level of they don't really support Palestine. What could be a possible solution now? Well, I think because Israel's there, and Israel's obviously, apart from the fact that it is got the full undisputed support of the United States, it's not there to leave, it's there. So, how does this, well, I would say the first thing that needs to stop, the first step is the immediate stop of aggression and violence. That needs to be the first step. Secondly, how can this move forward now? Because Israel's obviously not going to, first of all, they're not even prepared to do that. They're not even prepared to stop the hostility and the aggression, and hostility aside, but the aggression and violence, the military aggression, they're not prepared to stop that, imposing further measures, trying to expand settlements, trying to rob the Palestinians of their resources, placing huge kind of embargoes upon them and restricting them into the narrow strip of the Gaza human prison. So the first thing they can do is stop the aggression and the violence. The second thing is there could be discussions, which I know they never will discuss, but at least if other countries were prepared to be human beings and discuss, maybe I would say at the least Palestine should become a state, and it should be given that state a recognition, and things can move forward. But the problem is obviously it's just such a messed up situation, isn't it? Nobody prepared to. Well, I know what some people would say. They would say, I know, just bring back the caliphate. That'll resolve everything. Yeah. This rising insurance premium, bring back the caliphate. But I mean, it was a serious point, and may Allah make things easy for our brothers and sisters in humanity and in faith, and their struggle, especially in places like Al-Aqsa, but everywhere throughout the world, in places like I mentioned in India, where they're suffering, in places in Burma, wherever the suffering may be, and even people who are not Muslim but are suffering, our brothers and sisters in humanity that are suffering. So, may Allah make their, grant them ease. Ameen. It is tragic to watch, and it's tragic to hear, and it's a problem as well, because you see, sometimes, I know this is gonna, I don't know how this is gonna sound, but sometimes, you see, when you're incapacitated, like, there's only a certain amount that we can do. Now, if you continue to expose yourself to certain things, it will create great anxieties which have no outcome except they're just anxieties with you. So, like Muslims here, like, there's nothing they can really, there's certain things we can do, which we are doing, like creating an awareness, trying political campaigns, trying to get pressurizing the politicians, the MPs, and certain people like George Galloway, very vocal, doing a great job on speaking on the Palestinian tragedy. Things like this you've got going on. So this is happening. We can get aid if we can, support charities that are going out there, doing things like this. But then, we can't, for example, say, okay, let the Palestinians be a self-determined state. I can't do that. You can't do that. But when we keep watching certain videos of brutality and certain things like this, it's also very unhealthy for the people as well. It's very destabilizing for all people who are incapable of doing beyond that what I've already highlighted. And then it just results in destabilizing other things as well, other people's psyches. It affects their lives, it creates anxiety, it basically creates dysfunctional human beings, because we're watching people suffering. And do you know, some psychological studies say it's worse sometimes to witness somebody suffering than it is to sometimes suffer. I know this is going to sound bizarre, but sometimes, obviously, to suffer is horrendous, unquestionably, but to witness that sometimes has a greater psychological effect than actually undergoing the suffering. Because the person sometimes undergoing suffering, their self-defense mechanisms and psychological mechanisms kick in to help them survive. The person witnessing it, because he's not actually going through trauma, those kind of mechanisms haven't kicked in. So you become, it breaks you down to witness these kind of things. And I'm not saying to turn a blind eye, but I'm saying sometimes when we're flooded with these kind of things, I personally think that we shouldn't be doing that. And I think that we should be helping and creating an awareness and placing pressure on politicians and MPs and doing campaigns and charities and helping where we can, but we shouldn't be guilt tripping, because that becomes guilt tripping, where I show you a picture of a dead baby. Like, what are you supposed to do from that? So it's not like you can kind of like just say, so now you feel just real bad because there's nothing you can do. So you're just going to watch some dead babies and then just walk back to bloody watching Netflix. So what? And you're going to go back to your life. So it's not healthy for you. It's not. It kind of makes you go through. It breaks you down. So I'm just saying there should be a balance. That's all. I don't believe in this flooding the senses with these traumatic images. That's all. Not to detract from their plight. I mean, believe me, if it was up to me, I would stop their suffering today, instantly. But it's not up to me. It's not up to any of you. So there's very little we can do. Next question, people. Next question. Let's take on these questions. Emotional kar rahe ho hame yaar. You should know I'm an emotional guy. My mates keep taking the mick out of me for that. They don't seem to believe I'm an emotional guy. I'm connected down there. They think I'm totally stone cold. Right, so let's get to some of these questions. Yasin Sharif has an interesting question. Would evil exist without jinn? DC movie Wonder Woman. Muhammad Rehan Siddiqui said he was watching Wonder Woman instead of watching me. I mean, I can understand. Obviously, I ain't gonna say nothing. I ain't gonna say nothing. But you need to put your priorities in order, right? Shame on you. Just, trying to becoming so gullible just because you see beauty. Right, the thing is, right, so how do we explain animal behavior? Lions killing young cubs to preserve his lineage, which seems evil, but like Pharaoh killing the newborn is evil innate to some creatures. Right, okay, I'm not quite sure about the part of lions killing their cubs. I'm not sure what that means, but what I understand from this question is, how do we explain evil when evil exists in nature, that you have animals hunting and predatory behavior and things like this? Well, you see, we have to understand the terms evil. What are we calling evil? Is that really evil? That is the question. Or is it survival? Is it the laws of nature? That there is you see, but then it's interesting, because once we start to recognize that nature has laws and it has a way of operating, we too are part of nature. But that's so I think it's an interesting kind of question. I wouldn't describe it as evil, but that's been my point. I got into a discussion once with a vegetarian. Oh yeah, vegetarians, yeah, eco warriors. So I think there's nothing wrong with, if you want to be a vegetarian, you can be a vegetarian. It's not haram to be a vegetarian. You can be a vegetarian. Right, we've got Ricardo. All right, ¿cómo te vas? All right, bienvenidos. The thing is, look, I think there's nothing wrong in being a vegetarian. It's not haram, contrary to what people say. However, I got into this discussion, and the person said, well, this is like eating meat it's a tragedy. It's it's evil. So, I couldn't help but my fiqh acumen kind of kicked in, and I all of a sudden thought this is a debate going on. So I started all these kind of arguments started formulating. So I said, well, that's interesting, because if that's evil, what about animals hunting other animals? Is that evil? So the person said, well, but that's, animals don't have reasoning. They don't have intellectual capacity to make that distinction. I said, but Sherlock's. I said, but we do. So, going by your argument, we should prevent those animals from hunting other animals where possible. Because we too are tolerating the murder of other species. Are we not? Looks like you underestimated this Mufti. So the thing is, anyway, that was kind of gridlocked. That was like checkmate, got you there. Because if you're going to say that's evil, then our tolerating it is also kind of evil. So where at least possible, we ought to prevent animals from hunting other animals. Gareth, Brian, ahlan wa sahlan, alaykum assalam. So that was a checkmate scenario. Let's move on to another question, people. What do we have? Bob, give me a... How did that game used to go? Give me a T. Give me a P, Bob. Right, so... Hello, Shamshad. Shambi. Look at these people having their own conversations on here. Well, hello there, Gul Akhtar. I'm sorry, am I disturbing you? I mean, I'll just... don't mind me. I'm just here, just like as the background. As long as you can have your conversation on this live show, that's the main thing. You know, don't worry. We're just extras. Right, Mufti Saab, 2 questions from Umar al-Hallak. We live in times where it's often the case that people have girlfriends and boyfriends. Umar, natty. Sunniyam Babi. Oh, Sham Babi. Okay. Right, so. Right, how do you think should we as parents, siblings, or family deal with such a situation? How do you think it could be prevented? Right, well, Omar, you, I know you're waiting for me to tell the mechanism on how to prevent it so you can then counter that and look out for it. Right, so, you see, it's interesting that how, I don't know what that really means, because I've answered this before, that for us today in the West, with the current system that we have, heard HT has been banned in Indonesia. Amen. Hallelujah. But I'll come back to that. Right, the thing is that, look, as we're aware, as I've said before in previous discussions, that religion today, or Islam, the general understanding that we have on relationships and stuff like this, does not really provide what I'm trying to say, not Islam inherently, but the system we have today, the inherited thing, doesn't really provide a solution or an adequate solution for our context. So what it does provide seems like what reaches us in the books seems to be very idealistic. It doesn't fit a real life scenario, especially in the West or in these kind of places. So what must people do in those kind of situations where these things are happening? I would say, look, as Imam Malik said, Imam Malik was asked about Muslims who lived in certain non-Muslim parts of the world in his time, and in his time the world was completely different. Right, so look, Gul Akhtar is still having his private little conversation. Hashtag audacity. This is right. So anyway, right, so Imam Malik, when he was asked that in his time, in certain regions where Muslims live, in certain non-Muslim lands, everything they do is haram. He was asked that they eat haram, they work in haram, all of their things are haram. And this was to do with so Imam Malik was asked to advise these people and to advise on how he was asked to advise on how to choose certain representatives from them, or what advice should be for them. And he said, right, okay, Nakib, that's a good question, I'll come to that. Right, and he said that let them mitigate, keep to a minimum their haram activities. Like, try to be the least engaged, like knowing that they will be engaged, but the least engaged. So I think, you see, that's from a perspective of people who are engaged in things like this. But as to from a perspective of people who are trying to supervise them, who are trying to place those boundaries, I think there should always be a significant or an kind of emphasis on things like the importance of modesty, the importance of trying to keep an upright character, and people can, and look, things will always happen, but just to try to teach people to be responsible human beings. People are gonna, look, human beings, men and women, are gonna always be drawn to each other. I mean, now you're gonna have men, women, men, women, everything. We've got everything in this society now. I can't even remember the acronyms the LGBTQAI pluses, but all of we've got a hell of a lot going on. But men and women, generally speaking, will be drawn to each other always. I mean, that'll be like some magnetic force. That's like a super magnet. It's not going to ever stop. So I think we got to just be real with the situation as well. Somebody asked me, in fact, that once, that what is the proof for the existence of God? And I said that, look, well, okay, here's one of the proofs for the existence of God. I said, well, I can understand how men are always attracted to women, because the beauty that they have and the whole, that's just a given, how men could be attracted to women. I said, I don't understand how women are attracted to men. And the fact that they have an equal opposite attraction can only be a sign, an act of God. Because, I mean, in generally speaking, men, generally, they're not going to be like, whereas women, so that was my proof for the existence of God. The fact that women are as equally attracted and as strongly attracted back to men is almost unbelievable. I can't understand that. What are they actually attracted to? Like, I don't understand. Like, you think, what would they be attracted to in men? Like, but they are. So that's the proof, people. We have solved it. There is a God. Okay, so I think, look, just be sensible. Always advise responsibility. Always have important, significant teachings on things like modesty. And that's about all you can do. You can try to force people, but to be honest with you, when you force people, they usually go absolutely off their rockers. I wouldn't force people because, look, attraction is natural. You're going to be attracted. So say, live in this bloody cupboard over here. Live in this goddamn cupboard. And then this is why sometimes you would have, so like, let's say you grow up as a Muslim, you're watching all these movies and dramas and Bollywood dramas and Bollywood movies. I don't know so much about the dramas, but I know they are like this. I've never really watched them, but the movies are just all about ideal love. And so it's all love. You meet this guy and he's in love and he's awesome and sing songs and do all this kind of stuff. Now, you grow up on this kind of stuff. So imagine girls, I'm just saying, presumably this is talking, let's say, about boys and girls. But so they grow up watching this kind of stuff. Now they go out into the real world or they're locked up in a cage. Like, you can't go out, you can't die, God. You're going to marry your cousin. Right, so now this causes kind of it has huge, massively negative counter reactions. So people react and they negatively flip and you destroy their lives. You would rather that you just, give people freedoms, but just advise them. Don't be invasive or intrusive, but to some extent, I suppose you've got to be, to some extent as a parent, You will always be, because it will prevent certain measures. But try to teach them things like responsibility. And sometimes I think if they have a respect for the parents, people don't want to disappoint their parents. I know that sounds weird, but it's actually very true. That sometimes people don't want to disappoint. And based on that alone, they remain very responsible human beings. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Tell us about your workout routine. Come on, people, this ain't time for that. But for that, watch my Snapchats. Right, so next question. Right, we have a German company that produces halal. Some say you shouldn't eat it because we can't trust them. If something says it is halal, I believe that is fine to go with that. Although, you know, there's no harm in having sometimes watchdog kind of organizations or certain investigative bodies that check things out. That would be great as well. But I don't think, you know, like you have different boards that call things halal. So let's say in the UK you've got you've got HMC and HFA and I don't know, some others. Look, if they're halal, they're halal. My understanding is if somebody says it's halal, it's halal. I don't believe certain things have to be only HMC in the UK. If it's halal, it's halal. Khalas. Okay. Now, that's my understanding. I know people are very strict with that. Right, somebody had asked for some du'as. They're doing exams. People, best of luck. I'm sure it's going to be awesome, inshallah. Just go in with confidence. The madrasa exams, kill it, inshallah. Flying colours. Just make sure you write in Arabic, that's all. We don't just have aunties and uncles that don't trust these we don't have that. We just have aunties and yeah. Card tricks, card tricks are absolutely fine. Magic tricks, all of these things, there's nothing haram about them, people. You can definitely do these things. Right, and obviously magic does not really exist like that. It only means an illusion in Islam. Right, so if you, and I've done a whole lecture on that, on the evil eye and magic and stuff like that. I did a live thing dedicated to that, so you can find that on YouTube. Right, somebody had asked a question about watches, I think, and that they're into buying their watches, and does this make them extravagant? And Allah says in the Qur'an, وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ إِنَّ الْمُبَذِّرِينَ كَانُوا إِخْوَانَ الشَّيَاطِينَ. That the mubadhirin, those who squander their wealth, are brethren of the shaitan, of the devils. What does that mean? So if I'm into buying watches, which I'm not personally into, but that was the question. That watch is alright. People, man, look, my watch, people, I bought. But some of the watches today, whoa, you could buy like 2 watches or buy a house. That's literally what you could do. I'm not joking. I'm not even, I wish I was joking. I saw the prices of some of these watches. Sometimes you think, oh, you know, you see an advert, you think, oh, that's a nice, not that I'm not obsessed with watches, but let me click it. Whoa, £50,000. What the hell is that? Does it come with the arm? Does it come with the person that's wearing it? and the model, and you keep them? That's the... But anyway, right, so is this haram to... Is it haram to buy, like, let's say, expensive watches and do stuff like this? It is not haram in my understanding to do that. Oh, that's a good question. Shukran for reminding me. Amit. Foreign name there. Right, so it is not haram to do things like that. That is not, in my understanding, when Allah is saying, condemning things like israf, or He's condemning things like mubadhirin. In the verse of the Qur'an anyway, it's not just israf, but it's tabdhir, squandering. That is not really squandering wealth. that is, in a way, it's if you've got that kind of money and you want to invest it in watches because you're into watches, that's fine. These things retain their value and can be sold in the future, or you can just keep them, even if you like wearing expensive things. It's your money. If you like it, you can buy it. I do not believe that's haram. Squandering wealth, however, is doing things like just having, like ridiculously wasting money for, especially, and it's also, in my understanding, it's linked in, it ties in with other needs as well. Like, so for example, we have a social responsibility to help as well. Right, so we do have social responsibilities to help. Everybody would know people who may be struggling. Now, squandering is like, in my understanding, it is where you absolve yourself from those kind of responsibilities and then you spend unnecessarily on things just to show that you have money. And that's the difference. There is a big difference. You know, like you'll get some people, they'll say, I want, like, book me out, I don't know, like, here's a VIP table, or here's a VIP, and just because it's a VIP thing, or get me the most expensive this that you can get, and I just want to show people that I'm rich, which people, may be rich. Now, and yet these are the same people who will shirk their responsibilities, social responsibilities, to help other people. That is who these verses are condemning. So it's not the same as saying, like, if I was to, you see, it's not the same as buying things that actually have certain value because you like them. Like, I could buy an expensive suit because I like the suit. But imagine I was to say, like I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you get sometimes these Saudi princes traveling over to another country. So they will say, now that I'm going to be there for 10 days. So why don't you also take over 3 of my sports cars and, take these over and do this there. And whilst I'm there, I'll throw money like this and that. And each day, taking this, let's say taking my car here over there costs me £30,000, but it doesn't matter. I could just rent a nice, flashy, equal car over there, but no, why should I? I've got money, goddammit. But at the same time, there could be somebody starving and say, who the hell's that? Freak, I ain't gonna help them. See, that in my understanding would be haram. And because the responsibility would intensify for these people. And they would turn, and they're just squandering wealth for no reason. That attitude, like, let me take out a wad of cash and just go, all right, on these, these people, the way they squander wealth on wherever it is. In fact, one of the Saudi princes did actually I think he got on the street somewhere, it was in the papers. I mean, this is going several years back, where certain women, he was asking them to dance and just throwing, just on the streets, so much money. This kind of thing is what is squandering wealth, not buying things if you like them and they have value. Okay, so that's my understanding. People may disagree with that. Okay, so what is your opinion on wahdatul wujood? All right, where Saudi family spent £250,000 decoration for their London flat and then spent Christmas in Paris. Exactly. That is squandering wealth. That is a good example. Right, what is my take on wahdatul wujood? Do you think there is any dalil for it? Shafayat, wahdatul wujood, people, is a kind of Sufic theological doctrine which, if I understand it correctly, is to say that everything is in essence a part of God. That God is everything and everything is God. And I know it leans on the understanding that nothing could exist without God, but that's a rational understanding. But then everything is God. Like God permeates through everything. It doesn't necessarily mean in that way that like this mobile phone is God, like all hail the Samsung. But what it means is God permeates through everything. This understanding, which is similar to the Hindu belief as well of Brahma, who is a part of everything. That I don't personally believe in that. I don't think that's but I think it's interesting from, they may argue that from this day and age, they may say, well, if you went into the quantum world and went into the subparticles and eventually reached, what you broke down into the electrons and into everything, and the quarks and the, all of these things, the neutrinos and everything. Well, at the essence of everything, they say, there are these kind of vibrations, these strings. Nobody knows what these strings are, nobody's seen them, but they call this the string theory in quantum mechanics. Now, one argument they could possibly make is to say, well, that is God at that level. That kind of, or that is, I suppose, I'm not saying I agree with that, but I'm trying to say that is something that maybe today people could make that argument coming from what we would call this kind of pantheism, that God is through everything, permeates everything. I don't personally believe in that, and I don't support or, do I think this view is valid? I don't think this view is valid of wahdatul wujood. Right, so that's that. Is evolution compatible with Islamic belief? Of course it is, Zuhair. I've answered this on several occasions. Islam is absolutely compatible with evolution, but what does that exactly mean? That's the question. Right, so what I would say is that the beginning was given to us by Allah. He answers it himself in the Qur'an and then leaves the rest unexplained. So Allah says in the Qur'an, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ. And all life came from a single source. That's a verse of the Qur'an. And from whatever this water or fluid that Allah is speaking about, He says we placed, not created, we placed everything that will have life. That is a verse of the Qur'an. Now, how did it diversify? That is up to you to go figure. Allah did not explain that. How did that happen? I don't know. But the problem, one way we could find out is we keep exploring through science. We support science. We embrace this. We look into, and obviously creatures evolve from creatures. This is unquestionable. Right, yeah. Anisa, that's a good point. People think because Darwin had said that humans evolved from monkeys, evolution has massively moved on in the last few decades from Darwin's time. So although Darwinian principles are still there, Darwin was an absolute genius, by the way. He was. And credit where credit is due. I think it's unfair to be dismissive. If you just see and he doesn't even deny God, by the way. He doesn't. He just keeps these things separate, and it's very interesting. But putting that aside, today evolution bases its things on DNA and genetics, and you can't walk away from these things. So as I've highlighted on so many shows before, that look, people, how did Adam separate? Was it a miracle? Was, what happened? How did... This is for us to figure out. Right, Anisa, that's awesome. And absolutely, as I said, people today evolution does not say that we are from monkeys, as Anisa highlighted there as well. What it states is that there was a common descent. So it speaks about, if you look at Australopithecus and other primordial hominids, they had a common source of descent. They did not descend from each other. Harun Yahya's works on evolution, I wouldn't pay too much attention to them, but I mean, I would say, look, stick with science, people. You are much safer. Okay. Do not abort science. Do not listen. You know, if you hear your local Maulana telling you that do not listen to science, avoid that teaching of his like the plague. Do not be fooled by your local imams and Maulanas in turning away from science. Umit, what was your question again? Right, it says, please answer my question. So just to highlight that, and I'd like to, whilst I'm on the point, I'd like to mention something. This is really interesting. Ahmad Ali wa alaykum assalam from Trinidad. Right. So I'd like to, there was a reflection. I came across a point and then I checked it up in several tafasir. Only to find it spot on. Alright, you know when you've had this eureka moment and you check it out online, you check it out in the books, in the resource, to find that the scholars before you had confirmed it and said it. It is a buzz, people. It is a buzz, I'm telling you. So anyway, it's interesting that the verse of the Qur'an, when Allah says to the angels, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, I am placing a khalifa in this earth. A khalifa. Allah Kalim. Right, we've got to understand something here, people. We've got to pause for a moment. The thing is that when we say khalifa today, an understanding comes straight to our mind, because khalifa is being used, this word is being used, you know, for centuries with a particular meaning, which means a deputy, a ruler. What's interesting is the word khalifa does not linguistically mean a leader. The word khalifa, imam, does. It means a leader. Khalifa does not mean a leader. Neither does it mean a deputy. It came to take on this term deputy after Islam, after the Prophet ﷺ had passed away. Khalifa in Arabic means something ma yakhlufu shay'an akhar, what comes after something else. So Abu Bakr, when he was designated the Imam of the people, he was called Khalifatu Rasulillah. The one who succeeds comes after the Messenger of Allah. When he was given this title, this word adopted a new kind of meaning amongst Muslims. This is why after him, Umar was first called Khalifatu Khalifati Rasulillah, the one who succeeds, the one who succeeded the Messenger of Allah. And this became too long. So then they said, I know, we'll just call you Amirul Mu'mineen, the leader or the commander of the faithful. So this term came into existence, Amirul Mu'mineen, with Umar ibn al-Khattab. And Khalifa was continued to use with other people, with later successors as they came along. So you have to understand this, and this is why some of the hadith that mention Khalifa are interesting and become problematized. Because this word wasn't being used like this before. So when Allah says in the Qur'an, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, it could be from a far metaphorical sense. One could say that in Arabic you could understand from a remote understanding, a remote perspective, that this is to be some kind of leader, and we mean this as in he is succeeding Allah's presence, Like, so what is Adam coming after? He's coming after Allah's presence on earth. And in that understanding, he is a Khalifa. Because remember, the word Khalifa does not mean deputy. You know, like today we say, oh, it means deputy or steward. It does not mean steward in Arabic. We have to understand this. It means somebody that comes after. So the question was, who was Adam succeeding? Who did he come after? At this point, I would argue, based on what the angels respond, are you just going to place a species that will just create bloodshed on the earth? That he was succeeding the previous hominins on earth. He was a Khalifa li jinsil bashar. For the hominin species, he was the successor to them. Okay. This is why he was called Khalifa. Because he would succeed all humans, not modern day humans, but humans like Neanderthals, Homo erectus, Denisovan man, and all the other species. This is what he would be succeeding. And in some of the old tafsir books like Ibn Kathir, and what I've mentioned, was earlier on, this understanding, Ibn Ashur actually discusses this, as do other mufassirin, that Khalifa actually does not mean what it does, what people understand it today. It actually means a successor. And who was Adam succeeding? So a lot of them say that there used to be a creation on earth called al-Han wal-Ban, and whatever al-Han wal-Ban were, that they were succeeded by Adam, and hence he was called a Khalifa. This is found in many old tafsir books, including Ibn Kathir's and other people, Fakhruddin al-Razi and Ibn Ashur, and all of these people discuss the Han wal-Ban. Right, moving on to the other question. Okay, Umit has asked a few questions. He's asked this on a few occasions now. So what the hell, Umit? Let's take your question. He's asked, can we mock religion? Okay. Oh, sorry. He's asked, not mock, can we make jokes? Can we make jokes about religion? Not mock, make jokes. I want to highlight this distinction. First of all, yes, we can make jokes about religion. It is not kufr, right? It is not kufr to make jokes about religion. It is simply human nature. Right. Now, I want to draw a distinction between mocking and making jokes. When Allah says in the Qur'an, do not sit with those الَّذِينَ يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ, those who mock and belittle the verses of the Qur'an. This is not to be mixed up with joking. This is not to be mixed up with joking. Mocking is where you are ridiculing something, and it comes to do with, it's based on your intention and usually what you do. You are ridiculing the essence of Islam. The essence of Islam. You are ridiculing it. So that's the first distinction. That would be haram. Okay. In Islam, it would be haram. Secondly, there is another distinction between ridiculing the essence of Islam. At its essence, what Islam is essentially about, and the Qur'an as the Qur'an, ridiculing that, and between ridiculing the opinions and interpretations of scholars about certain verses or rulings. The latter is not haram. You can mock, you can, first of all, you can joke about religion, that is fine, and you can mock and ridicule opinions of men and their interpretations. However, in Islam, what you can't do is, this is within Islam and only applies to Muslims, you do not ridicule or mock the essence of Islam. So that's the difference. Okay. Now, so if, for example, we have an opinion in Islam that says, unfortunately widespread, that women cannot travel 48 miles unaccompanied. That has to be one of the most absurd and pathetic and dumb statements that in this day and age somebody could come out with. But unfortunately they do. This is absurd. Right, so a woman can travel 47 miles, she can travel 47.5, she can travel 47.8, 48.9, sorry, 47.9, God forbid. Toba, Toba, did I say 48.9? Ya salam, ashhadu an la ilaha. Right, so, but she can't travel 48, because once she travels the 48th, then the whole universe and the cosmos comes to a standstill as this female species places another step boldly into the unknown. Well, I doubt that. Right, nothing happens, people, when she takes that extra step. It's just the same. Right, so now, so yes, you can mock that because it's absurd. Allah has not said that in the Qur'an, that women can't go 48 miles. The Prophet never ever said that. There weren't even miles like that in the Prophet's time. That the Arabs used anyway. So this is an opinion of certain scholars who interpreted certain hadith. And they thought this is what the hadith meant. In their time it may have worked, because 48 miles in their time might have meant, you know, the journey of such a distance, and it would be unsafe. When the Prophet said a woman should not go 3 days and 3 nights unaccompanied, he was talking about her safety. Because in their time they only had treaties that would expand to certain regions. If she was to go beyond that, she would be a soft target to be attacked. So this is why the Prophet kept changing this. Sometimes he said 1 day and 1 night. Sometimes he said 2 days and 2 nights. Sometimes he said 3 days and 3 nights. Sometimes some hadith he said 3 days and 3 nights and above. فَصَاعِدًا. This was because the safety region, the region of safety and insurance, if you like, of where they had indemnity, that fluctuated during the Prophet's lifetime. So that is the understanding. So of course we could mock that. We have an opinion within Islam by certain scholars who say, for example, and I find this despicable and ridiculous, that they say that if you had a daughter out of wedlock, because she was out of wedlock, she is not your mahram and you could actually marry her. I mean, what kind of bizarre nonsense is that? That person is tripping. There's no two ways about this. Okay, that is absurd. So of course you would mock that. And there's an opinion, I give an opinion, there's an opinion that some people have said, oh, if you were in Darul Harb, which HT, Hizb ut-Tahrir and their other kind of associates claim we are in and the whole world is in, right, which is the non-Islam lands, this ruling said that if you feared starvation, you could kill and eat kuffar, non-Muslims. How absurd is that? That's an absurd statement. That's ridiculous, preposterous. So what I'm trying to say is, men, they are fallible. They are like you and me. They will come out with opinions, and sometimes many times they've done a great job. They've come out with great opinions, and some things they've said are just madness. I'm sure, if I reflect on my own words, actually I probably say a lot of madness all the time, but if you reflect on your own words throughout your life, you've probably said some mad things. So now what we don't want to do is give this sanctity, this kind of infallibility to all opinions of all scholars. What we do is we respect fiqh, we respect the imam, we respect people, we don't denigrate them. We don't say, oh, Imam so-and-so was an idiot. That is wrong, because they have committed their lives, their energy, their sweat and blood and dedication to this deen. They have provided us with a core understanding. They have been part of this chain that has allowed Islam to reach us. And we love them for that. But we don't mock them, but we can mock opinions. There's a difference. So that's to highlight. So it's not haram. And don't, and some people try to guilt trip you. So they try to emotionally blackmail people. Oh my God, you mocked that. That's kufr, you've left Islam. Well, as I say to that, well, the last time I checked, it wasn't your dad's deen to kick me out of it. Kick me out of it, God damn it. You think, so, it's almost blasphemous for people to think they can kick other people out of the religion. It's like, where did you get that authority? Okay, let me get this right. It's, you can kick other people out of the religion. Okay, so it must be your monopoly on this religion. That in itself is a blasphemous kind of arrogance. So, yeah, so I'm saying, now everything in its own context, okay? You will find ulama from our salaf that mocked other opinions. You will find the Qur'an mocks certain opinions. The Qur'an mocks the opinion of people worshipping statues to be gods. It does that. It clearly does that. The Qur'an mocks that as an absurdity. It calls it, these people, they have zero brains. They're worse than animals in trying to use their intellect, because they can't even, because they worship something that they themselves have created. Now that is, so the Qur'an itself will mock views that are absurd like that. So there's no harm, just to clarify, but at the same time, you see, we have to, it's important to draw a distinction between the deen, which we do not mock as a deen. We do not mock the essence of Islam. But you can joke about Islam. There's a difference now. So humorous jokes are fine. So the Prophet himself participated in jokes that were Islamic. So there's a hadith that the Prophet said, that where he said to a woman that no old woman, she was an old woman, and he said, oh, it's a ruling of God that old women cannot enter paradise. And he was joking with that, and she didn't know he was joking. Obviously, he said it as a joke, and she was like, she was gutted. and the Prophet said, that's, and then he said that's because anybody who enters paradise will have youth. And so that was, so the Prophet partook in these kind of joking, and you'll see the Salaf cracked loads of jokes about understanding verses in different ways. So they will do things like this a lot of the times, like they might quote a verse which will suit a certain context, and it was funny or amusing. We've got so much of that, so much of it. So anyway, right, so that's not the same as mocking. So joking is absolutely fine with everything, and mocking is permissible with opinions only, but not with the essence of the faith, and neither with people, but their opinions. Right, somebody just asked about Masjid al-Aqsa again. I answered that at the beginning of the show, so if you check that out, inshallah, I did go into, yes, people should raise an awareness, but I did highlight our capacities as well and limitations. Brainwashing based on my own perception and my own opinion. Exactly, David, exactly. I totally agree with you. Right, okay, let's take some other questions, people. Let's have some questions. What is going on? What is your take on Fiqh al-Sunnah? Fiqh al-Sunnah is a book written by Sayyid Sabiq. It's a good book on comparative fiqh. I have it. I've used it. It's good. I think that's, I don't know what else to say. Khizar, people, that's Heiser right there, an academic. We had an awesome discussion the other day, the whole night. Really some fruitful kind of thoughts, concepts being discussed. I tell you, academics, amazing people, but we need to kind of bridge. I think people working in academia from an Islamic perspective, there needs to be a bridge between them and the regular Muslims and the ulama. Somebody asked about organ donation. I've answered that on many occasions. It's absolutely fine. I can't lip read. Is he talking politics? Kelly Garnett. Hell no. No politics. I'm answering questions. Okay. So no politics, no. Right. So let's take some more questions. Who are Yajuj and Majuj? I do not know who Yajuj and Majuj are. Okay. They are mentioned in the Qur'an as some entity that Dhul Qarnayn has to struggle against. And what does that mean? Some people have considered the thought of aliens being referred to as Yajuj and Majuj. I find that an interesting thought concept. Okay. Isra wal Miraj. Sa'ad Khanzada, I've answered this before. There is a difference of opinion. Some people feel that Isra wal Miraj both were only a vision. That is absolutely fine to hold that opinion within Islam. Within mainstream Islam, this was the opinion of the great companion of the Prophet Muawiyah radiallahu an. It was the opinion of Aisha radiallahu anha and other Salaf. Other people feel it was a physical journey. Okay, both are valid opinions. If you feel that, because the verse of the Qur'an actually describes it as a vision. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا الرُّؤْيَا الَّتِي عَرَيْنَاكَ إِلَّا فِتْنَةً لِلنَّاسِ. And we did not make, in Surah Al-Isra, Allah says, the vision we showed you, except as a test for other people. So I would feel that yes, it strongly shows that it was a vision. But both are opinions within Islam. What is nikah misyar? Nikah misyar is simply a low commitment marriage. It's what Erik Erikson would call in his study of social psychology. He would say it's low commitment and high exploration. So it's basically where you say, what say you? What say you? Is this going down? Is it where you have an arrangement, where you have a relationship with somebody, but it's low commitment? You might only meet on certain days, maybe fortnightly, maybe monthly, whatever, maybe every other day. Maybe you have an arrangement that I'd love to be in a relationship with you, but I'm not financially able to provide, and they're cool with that. And so this is what is done. It's not a marriage without a prenup. It's just a marriage which is low commitment, high exploration. That's it. So it's basically saying that I want a relationship, but it's going to be a compromised relationship, which I think there's no harm in. Look, I think relationships are up to people. I abhor the concept that anybody gets to dictate how people should have relationships. Even the fact of the state trying to dictate how people can be in or out of relationships, to me, is shocking. Like, I find that so invasive. People can have their own relationships, whoever wants it, however they want it. Okay, so if a couple want to be together, but they want to be together on their own terms, as long as they're both consenting, it's a mutual understanding. If they're happy with it, nobody else's business. That's what I would say. So it is a nikah misyar. This is a modern day word. It is a normal marriage. It's just a marriage with certain. It's an unusual relationship. So a normal. When you say marriage, a picture comes to your mind. This is a modern picture, by the way. But a modern picture comes to your mind: man, woman, living in a house, family home, having children, doing things like this. Which is actually a modern 20th century version of how marriages should be. But this is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people may say, hey, I want a long distance relationship. Some people may say they want an open relationship. Some people may say they want to... You see, relationships are up to people. It's nobody else's business. So if people are okay with it, if somebody says, I only come to this city or this once every 3 weeks, once every 4 weeks, but I still want to be in a relationship with you. If the two people involved are cool with it, they're cool with it. It's not a special kind of nikah. It just means that they've got an understanding of how the reality will look. I think people need to stop. So we get a lot of questions about nikah misyar. So I'm not sure why that is. Obviously, it shows the situation. Who is Sandy? What is Sandy? Okay, Christ is our Saviour. Well, amen to that, huh? Alright, Sandy, you've been blocked and sent off to Jesus Christ, our Saviour. Amen. Can I get an amen? Right, so, Akhi, how does someone actually leave Islam? How does somebody actually leave? Well, what he has to do is he has to contact Mufti Abu Layth and he has to purchase for him two properties and a sports car. And then Mufti Abu Layth can guide him through the rituals to leave Islam. How does that sound? Okay. Relax, man. People, it's a belief. You believe in it, you don't believe in it. It's like that. In central London, please. At least one of them in central London. What the hell? That's me being generous. Right, so, what other questions have we got? Let's take a look at some of these, man. Is it permissible to own and profit from a website that has pictures of semi-naked women? Hamza Ahmed. Nutty. What kind of websites are you on, Hamza? Right, so Hamza is on some websites of some semi-naked women. Wow. Es muy interesante. So let's take it. I'm not sure what you mean by how can profit. I mean, how do you profit off a website with semi-naked women? Is this buyabride.com? I'm not sure what you mean by, unless I know, perhaps what you mean is you've got a website selling clothes and the women are wearing the clothes and modeling it. Is that what you mean? I don't know. I'm trying to guess your question. So, I mean, if that's what you mean, well, that's different. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure how. Oh, unless it's one of those websites. I get it. Well, you got to put in your credit card details. I get it. One of those. You. Once again, if you want a fatwa for that, well, those two properties I spoke about, one being in central London, and then we'll see what we can do about this one. Just till then, right? You deal with that. Right. Next question. Do you know the Ahbash or the Habashiyyah, a Muslim group following a sheikh called Abdullah al-Harari and al-Harari? Yes, of course, al-Harari. And what is your opinion on them? I've read a bit about Abdullah al-Harari. Somebody's asking about hadith. That hadith just doesn't sound very authentic from what I've just seen there about graves splitting open and some person coming out and doing something. Right, so Abdullah al-Harari and this group of his, the Ahbash, I don't know too much about them, but what I do know about them, I mean, they're like a Sufi order that has like a political strain to them as well. I know that I think he came from the Habash and he moved to, I think, Lebanon, and he got involved in politics, and he has some very harsh interpretations on Islam from what I'm aware. And I would think that, from what I'm aware, I could be wrong, but that they have some extremist views on calling people kuffar and kafirs and you know, getting rid of people out of Islam, and any other, even other Sufis, they chuck them all out of Islam, and they chuck all kinds. So I would kind of just say, look, any kind of extremism, any kind of fanaticism, stay away from it. Right, always resort to reason. If you know young vulnerable people that are getting influenced by that, maybe just encourage them to always refer back to the voice of reason, people. The voice of reason. Can we do the Hadrah, Sama', or is it Bid'ah? Imran I.K. Khan. Imran Khan. Is it the Imran Khan? Sab, up from Pakistan. Salam sab. The thing is, right. Damn, I've just, let me just go back up. Right, just one moment. Right, okay, so, what is our understanding on the Hadrah? I don't see, you see, people try to argue that the Hadrah is an Islamic act. I don't think it's an Islamic act, like an action of Islam. I think it's a ritual that people have introduced, which personally, at best, I wouldn't say it's haram, but I would, in line with what Imam Malik said, I would be in line with that thought that it is an innovation and it is at best discouraged. But if if people want to partake in it, it's their life. I mean, I'm not going to condemn people if they take part in the Hadrah. I think they overdo it in the justification in trying to prove it was a sunnah of the Prophet. I mean, for God's sake, it's not a sunnah of the Prophet. It's not. Worship is a ritual. This kind of hypnotic chanting and dancing and doing stuff like this is not a ritual, an Islamic ritual. Okay. I see it as a kind of cultural tool that was developed over the ages to create a hypnotic trance by which people could attain a sense of an ecstatic state. Right, this kind of jumping up and down, the breathing, inhaling, exhaling, aggressively, doing these kind of chanting in certain rhythms. This creates a hypnotic kind of a trance state for people, and it helps people get through certain parts of life. I get that. And so this is why I wouldn't condemn people if they were doing it, but I wouldn't go as far in saying that it was Islamic. I would just say it's been associated with Islam. So it's become associated. It's not like, for example, the Salaf would never do things like that. Obviously, I'm sure they would have found it absurd, because in their time there wasn't this kind of ritualistic, there wasn't this kind of chanting trance, okay, to Islam. But anyway, let's move on. Do dhikr until people call you mad. That's a weak or fabricated hadith. That's not actually a sahih hadith. Okay. The Prophet did not want people to look mad. Okay. Anybody who's telling you that the Prophet wanted you to appear insane to society is borderline blaspheming against the Prophet, in my understanding. Because how can you disrespect the Prophet like that? Because why would the Prophet encourage you to act like madmen? That's just absolutely insane to even insinuate. And I know it's being done with a good intention, but it's nonsense to assume that the Prophet, instead of saying what the Prophet did say, is I came to perfect your character. I came to civilize you. Not I came to teach you to act like madmen. Like to say that the Prophet said, do this in such a way so people looking at you would think you're mental. It's crazy. Is qawwali halal? In my understanding, music is not haram. I've highlighted this before. You can watch I speak in more detail in my Q&A on, it's at the York University, I think it is on, YouTube, where I go into more detail about that. So it's not, music is not haram, in my understanding. I mean, people may argue it's discouraged, it's time wasting, and sometimes it might be good, it might be helpful. It helps with your mood, it helps with your, it helps you, motivates you, it does stuff. Qawwali, some qawwali are awesome. Aziz Mia is a don. No questions asked. Aziz Mia is a legend, right? So, hashtag haters gonna hate. But yeah, but this, you have to recognize that this other opposing view that condemns and makes everything haram, it's a very Puritanist view. They're very Puritanist. Those people who act like that, they're Puritanists in life. They teach ideals which are not realistic. And I'm not saying in music, I suppose it could be realistic to choose not to listen to music, but I don't feel it's haram to listen to music. The Prophet himself told Ibn Umar in Tirmidhi to listen to the flute and tell him when he couldn't hear it anymore. Why would the Prophet tell a companion to do something haram? It's ridiculous. And the hadith in Bukhari, there's a long discussion on this. I've answered. The hadith in Bukhari does not say musical instruments. It says places of entertainment, which people then purposely, falsely, they load that term and mistranslate it as music. It could have been talking about strip joints, for all we know. It says the translation in Arabic is al-malahi, the place of lahu, an entertainment. Now, normally, the Arabs would have, when they did have women dancing and doing all this kind of stuff in their they did have music playing as well, but that's not fair to translate it all as music instruments, because it doesn't say that. The Prophet could have said that, but he didn't. Anyway, so that's that, answering that. But I mean, I've answered in much more detail. I've even answered in my Portsmouth Q&A. You can, if you listen to that, even if the content is dirty, Hamza Sharif, it is not haram. It does not make it haram. It might be, for example, inappropriate, but it's not haram. Okay? So if somebody was saying, F this, F that, or whatever, or the singing about sex, that doesn't make the song haram. Okay? I'm just saying. And all you have to do is read Arabic poetry, which is the Jahiliyyah poetry still taught in all madrasas today, and hailed and memorized by several scholars throughout the world. The Jahiliyyah poetry and even the Islamic poetry, right? So, is this gonna collapse on me? Right, I haven't got batteries dying. Right, so it is actually most of the poetry, a huge portion of it was all about sex. So they would just sing about Imra al-Qais, who was rated the #1 Arabic poet in the Prophet's time, and a lot of the Arabs used to memorize his poems and rate him and whatever, and as an example. But all other poetry as well that comes after, it's non-stop about sex. In fact, Arabic poetry is not like Urdu poetry. It's not actually very Urdu poetry is what we would call, it has what we would call platonic love. So al-hub al-uzri, this kind of, it has this it speaks about love and about longing and breaking of the hearts and doing things like this, and describing the beauty of a woman as in her eyes and her height and her hair and things like this. This is Urdu poetry. Arabic poetry is not, I mean, it will have that stuff in it, but it is very explicit. It will speak about breasts, women's breasts, their figures, about sex. It will speak about non-stop about this kind of stuff. It's not, and this kind of stuff, in fact, in Sahih Bukhari, there's a hadith that we used to read and go over. Kunna natadhakar, the poetry of Jahiliyyah in the masjid of the Prophet, the Sahaba said. And we used to do this in front of the Prophet, they would do this. So that's just to Muhammad Abdul Awwal, people. Sheikh Abdul Awwal right there, right, from London, doing it. We used to study together, share dormitories, and back in the days, awesome person from London. If you need to ever get in touch for advice and things like that. Right, let's move on to the next question. So what I want to highlight is, like in physics, sometimes what you might immediately perceive to be common sense haram, because you're Muslim and you assume certain things, is what I call the ontology of religion with a capital R that is influencing your decision, not so much Islam influencing it. And you can listen to my explanation of that in those two talks I spoke about. Can Muslims cook with alcohol? That's an interesting question. Although really it doesn't apply much to Muslims who are already usually Muslims, but maybe more so to converts and people like that. Because normal Muslims who are born Muslims, we usually, mostly, not always, but mostly have been kind of raised with this kind of antipathy towards alcohol. So we will not, we wouldn't have alcohol, we wouldn't, you wouldn't be in the homes, and you wouldn't be brought up with alcohol in the cooking either. What is interesting is, can alcohol, if it's diluted, be acceptable? Now, Ibn Uthaymin gives a very interesting response, which is on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and find Ibn Uthaymin, who is the hardcore Salafi. I mean, he's probably center from the Salafis. So you have Salafis, and I suppose if you want their hardcore, he might be hardcore Salafi compared to non-Salafis, but to Salafis, he's not actually seen as their hardcore. He's seen as their middle. He's in the middle. He's not too, for them, for their understanding, for the Wahhabi Salafis, he's not a, like a very open-minded, liberal, but he's not hard, on those nutcase scholars. He's just in the middle for them. Now, he has a very interesting response to this, which I thought was good and actually fits in with our Islamic heritage. He highlights that the hadith, the hadith that the Prophet said, that ma askara kathiruhu faqaliluhu haram, that which a lot of makes you intoxicated, a tiny amount of is haram. He first of all, in his fatwa, he highlights an important point, and this is Ibn Uthaymin saying this. He says that this is, first of all, he says that this is not, when it says kathiruhu, what is a lot of something, we're not talking about a lot. We're talking about a lot of within the context of normal speech. Remember this, people. I keep saying this every week. Remember these things in their normal spoken context. So when I say, if somebody says, boy, you've drank a lot of tea today, they don't mean that you drank 500 barrels of tea, because that is a lot of tea. Of course, that's they mean a lot by normal standards. It's important, and Ibn Uthaymin highlights that, and I totally second him, that is an important distinction. That a lot here is the given context of a lot. Because otherwise, natural things will, like orange, peels and natural products will contain small amounts of alcohol, which if you drunk in huge quantities would contain an intoxicating element to them. But nobody ever sane would drink hundreds of barrels of something, or 100 liters of something. You wouldn't drink 100 liters. That is not. So a tiny amount. So if something had, Ibn Uthaymin says up to 3% even, he says, had natural alcohol found in something, he says that's not alcoholic as 100%, whatever. So this is Ibn Uthaymin's fatwa. Now, so when we say the hadith says if a lot of it intoxicates, a small amount of it is haram, it's talking about a lot of that thing relatively. So if something which, let's say 1 or 2 pints of it, that is a lot. If that was to intoxicate, which I'm sure it would, right, especially if we don't drink alcohol, a little amount of that thing, it has to come back to that very thing and its quantity. That same thing Ibn Uthaymin highlights, and it's important, is haram. What a lot of people do is don't go back to that same thing. They say the thing by its genus. He's saying no, the thing, the drunk thing, the actual amount, the thing in. So if this was a pint of beer, right, now if this would intoxicate me, imagine I was to say, okay, I'm not going to drink a pint of that. What I'm going to drink is just one little sip of this glass. One sip of it. I'm not going to drink the whole thing, but one sip of this glass. That is clearly haram in Islam. So a small amount of it, but it must stay as it. What Ibn Uthaymin says is that if you took out, like let's say I had this and I poured water into it and diluted this massively, then Ibn Uthaymin in his fatwa says that that no longer is that first it. So in this case, I diluted it to the extent that the alcohol that was in there is only up to, he gives the example of 3% in his YouTube fatwa. He says in this case, drinking that is halal. That's an interesting fatwa. It's an interesting explanation. And I know some people will disagree with him, but he is generally quite a strict person. I know to the Salafis he's middle, but to non-Wahhabi Salafis he's actually quite strict. Very strict. And this explanation from him is very well explained because it comes in line with what people like Imam Muhammad had brought in their books through Imam Abu Hanifa. Because in Kitab al-Athar by Imam Muhammad, he highlights with a chain going back to Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was sitting down and they had some nabidh. And nabidh was a drink which was semi-fermented. So it was fermented, so it started to get alcohol, but it wouldn't reach the full fermentation level. And the Arabs would drink it. But now there was this whole debate, is nabidh allowed? Now the Hanafi madhab said it was, because Imam Muhammad brings several chains going back to Sahaba drinking it. And in fact Imam Abu Hanifa said that if you gave me the whole world with its wealth, I wouldn't say it's haram, because I know of tens of Sahaba who drank it. So now in one of the chains, in one of the narrations that Imam Muhammad brings, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh is sitting there and he picks up nabidh and he takes a sip and he says, whoa, that's too strong. And then he mixes it with, and he stops the person from drinking it. He mixes it with water and into the jug, and then he sips it and he says, now drink it. It's halal. It's okay. So what Uthaymin had explained there was kind of in line with that kind of hadith. So I would agree with what Ibn Uthaymin has said. But this really wouldn't apply to most Muslims because we don't have that culture anyway. So for non-Muslims, if they had a culture where that was done, because they're still coming from a non-Muslim background and they've got non-Muslims around them that do cooking, if they were cooking in something with a small amount of alcohol that was going to be mixed in with huge amounts of liquid, which would then dissipate and mix in, and it's no longer that thing, then based on what Ibn Uthaymin has said, that is okay, that is halal. And I would second that fatwa in that case, what Ibn Uthaymin has said. So if the Salafiyah want to kind of go mad on if they're going to have a taqwa attack and flip, then I want you to understand this is Ibn Uthaymin. It's not me. It's not me. Nah, Baba, nah. This is Uthaymin. Right, so if you want to shoot someone, you can aim for Ibn Uthaymin, right? Not me. Yeah? Don't shoot the messenger. Right? Hum to sharif log hain, yaar. Sharif log. Innocent, naive people, we're only conveying what others have said. Right. Sea creatures, according to the Maliki madhab, god damn, look at that, the battery's gone. God damn, look at that. Oh god, almost broke it. Right, so all sea creatures, according to the school of Medina, halal. Okay. Including amphibians, including land and sea creatures, so all reptiles that live in the sea as well are halal, even if they spend more time on the land, like crocodiles, turtles, tortoises. This is why I had a croc burger when I was in, what was it, Plymouth. It's like, whoa, it's interesting actually, it tastes quite, it's very crunchy, it's alright, it's not bad actually. Yep. They're Android phones. Right, so don't worry, I got another one right here. So let's take these questions. What else have we got here? What time is it, people? Let's right, please answer this question. What are your thoughts? Do you think Muslims' perception and understanding of Islam would have been better off today if Ahlul Ra'y instead of Ahlul Hadith went mainstream? Using your intellect. Zafar Tareen. Right. Yeah, exactly. I need a portable charger. Shukran. Right, I need that. You know what it is? I have actually got a wireless charger in. I need to set it up here. That's all. Good point though, people. I like it. Shukran. Right, so you see, Ahlul Ra'y is mainstream. But it's just, what this means is that in Islam, I did explain previously in last week's session, there have always been two strands at looking at things. One strand has been at where the deen should always be based on reason. This begins, we believe this was the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was inherited by his cousin Ibn Abbas primarily and other companions, and this is how it was taught by legends like Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa. These kind of people were seen as Ahlul Ra'y. Then you had a very dogmatic approach to religion, which was initially inherited by people like Abu Hurairah radiallahu an and other companions. And then you have companions who are in the middle. Now this is like a spectrum. Now these both strands of Islam are found right from the very beginning. The only issue has been over time, the institutionalization of Islam has unfortunately created a culture of censorship. Because if you encourage free critical thought, you render yourself to being criticized. Like it's easy to be a victim of criticism if I encourage critical thought. So unfortunately, along the way, a lot of scholars as well, not the early scholars, but later on through time started to lock off these doors of criticism. And one of the ways to do it was to criminalize the intellect. And I think one of the reasons as well they did it was because they were trying to fight against an early extremist group known as the Mu'tazila, who is wrongly translated as the rationalists. That is wrong. They were an extremist group who did rely on reason as well, but not always. But because they happen to catch out some of the arguments of the mainstream Muslims using reason, so what some of the scholars tried to do was react to that by saying, oh, well, you're not allowed to use reason. And then this war, this cold war between the Mu'tazila and al-Sunnah lasted for centuries. A casualty of war was the murder, the treacherous and brutal murder of reason. And we're still suffering from the kind of the casualties of that war till today. But it has carried on. I mean, there's been great people till today who have been the voice of reason. Right, so, and I would definitely advise that Islam should always make sense. If Islam is not making sense, then just because the Maulana you've asked doesn't know the answer does not mean there is no answer. Right, okay, let's move on. We know that the Prophet and his companions are exemplar. How do you think they would have approached and conducted themselves in our times, in this society in the 21st century UK? Is this a case of applying the objectives of Islam? Of course this is. If the companions, this is a hypothetical question, but if the companions were of the 21st century, they would have been of the 21st century. Unlike some Muslims today who are of the 21st century but want to act like they're of the 7th or 8th century. That's not how they would have acted if they were from here today. That's obvious because you can just tell by the way they behaved in their own time. Right, so, and this is to do with the maqasid of the Sharia. Okay, so the maqasid of the Sharia, the objectives of Islam, mean, and this is something that I think Muslim jurists, whether they admit it or not, have always in the background struggled with. Islamic legal theory with all capital letters, not a specific theory, but Islamic legal theory as a whole, has struggled with this concept since time. And that is the dichotomy, handling this dichotomy of Islam. The deen of Islam was completed with the Prophet, and Islam is for all times. This dichotomy, Islamic legal theory struggled, not in writing, but in principle, behind the scenes, it struggled massively with this dichotomy. And what you see is almost a schizophrenic response to this dichotomy. People don't know, because on one hand they want to believe the deen was completed in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, but then they want to say Islam is for all times, therefore the ethics and everything will change. So now one split will say, well, okay, all ethics, all human behavior, everything should just be like 7th century Arabia. But then really, Islam isn't for all times. Islam is really only for 7th century Arabia. And everybody who does not live in Arabia and does not live in the 7th century has to conduct themselves as though they live in 7th century Arabia. So you have that problem. Or does Islam want it to reflect, its nature to reflect each area and time? And therefore the rulings will radically change, because the ethics of people will radically change. But in that case, that means the deen might start to look very different from what it looked in 7th, 8th century Arabia. So this is the struggle. So do you try to keep the tradition in the interest of the preservation of the tradition? Do you want everybody to, do you deny that Islam is for all times? Or do you, what do you do? So this has been the struggle ever since. In my understanding, those people who said Islam is truly for all, not just those who are pretending to say, those who were saying that Islam is for all times and places, I definitely am in line with those scholars. So therefore, Islam would change. It would adapt to each environment. Therefore, it may look very different to how it looked in the time of, let's say, 7th, 8th century Arabia. And Islam would want it to look different. Because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. That why would God create creation who He creates them to change, but then wants them all to be fixated on a particular time era? It doesn't make any sense. So that's my understanding there, okay? And this maqasid thing, you have to understand. So people who spoke about this, who took this understanding, who said that Islam is for all places. Look, let me get this right, first of all. As a disclaimer, everybody is going to say, as lip service, Islam is for all times and places. But they don't truly believe it. So the camp that I spoke about on the far right, they don't truly believe that. They will say that, but what they really mean is it's for all times and places to reach them and turn them back to 7th century Arabia time and place. That's the full sentence of what they mean. So they mean it is for all times and places, as opposed to Islam isn't for us, but it's really to take us back to 7th century Arabia. The other group would feel, no, it is for all times and places, in their time and places, as their time and places. Right, so now maqasid was really deployed by people who were trying to say that Islam is for all times and places and needs to adapt. This was really the backbone of the school of Medina, the Maliki madhab. It is really promoted by the school of Medina, by Imam Malik and his school. The Hanbali madhab have it as well, but the Hanbali madhab are a very, they are a madhab that have, and I'm not saying this to diss them, but if I was to describe them, I would describe them as kind of with dissociative identity disorder. Multiple personality kind of disorder. So they are like, they have kind of like a schizophrenia about them, in a nice way. I don't mean to be disrespectful to them, but you don't know, like sometimes they are like this, like the Malikis, so they have this, and sometimes they're just pure Puritanists. Very hard-line Puritanists that are like, everything haram, haram, nothing, break. They're very hardliners. And then you get people between them that are on one end and on the other end. And then you get some that fluctuate in between, like Ibn Taymiyyah. He fluctuates in between. Sometimes he's very maslahah, Islam is for all times and places and forward thinking. Sometimes he's just a Puritanist. And that's because he's Hanbali, and the Hanbali school has that kind of, this kind of dissociative identity disorder thing going on. But they've got some cool people, honestly. Ibn Aqil was a legend, and they've got amazing people in the Hanbali school as well. But they've got this, so Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who the Wahhabi Salafis today are influenced by. He was Hanbali, and he was from the Puritanist kind of way of thinking. But maqasid really was introduced by people on the other thing. But because it took off. See, this is the thing, isn't it? When something takes off, everybody wants to be a part of it. You know, when something, success draws people to it. That's the nature of success. Now, because maqasid has been successful, everybody wants a piece of the pie. So what's happened is everybody they realized maqasid, and they only once again retook off in this last century. Initially by the true Salafis, not by, you see, when we say Salafi, we have to differentiate. Today the term Salafi has been hijacked and used by Wahhabi Salafis. They were not the people who first came up with the word Salafi. The people who first came up with the word Salafi were in Egypt. They were Egyptians and very kind of free thinkers. People like Jamaluddin al-Afghani and Muhammad Abdu and Rashid Rida and these kind of people who in their time as well, very close to them, Ibn Ashur, the Maliki legend, and you know, Sheikh Salim Bu Hajib and all these other kind of amazing people, and Sheikh Yahya al-Wallati, al-Shanqiti, and all these other people, they were having this kind of awakening in the same time. They're all kind of contemporaries. Now, some are senior and some are junior, but they share the same time. Now, they, not all of them, but Muhammad Abdu and these people came up with the term Salafi. They called themselves Salafi because they said we need to resort to reason and go back to thinking about this deen in the way the Salaf used to. What's happened is Rashid Rida, unfortunately, when he visited Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, endorsed him by saying, yeah, you guys are true Salafi. I don't know what the hell he was saying that about, but Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab has nothing to do with reason, the voice of reason. He is absolutely on the other end of the spectrum. He is what we call a dogmatist. So you have people who, this deen is a deen of reason or a deen of dogma. And they are dogmatists. He was a dogmatist. He was revolutionary in his own way, trying to take up. He led to fighting against the Ottomans and doing all of that. Now, he was a hardcore Puritanist. He declared countless people kafir in his time because they did shirk and bid'ah. And he went way out of, and he fought against, and he captured, and he killed people, enslaved women, and did all of that kind of thing. Right now, because Rashid Rida said, I don't know why, but he apparently praised him and said to him, you are part of this Salafi awakening that we are having. These people embraced the name Salafi. In the decades that came after them, and especially in the last century and in the recent decades, the Wahhabi Salafis have completely hijacked the term, and now it is only known by them. Because Rashid Rida and these people, their students and that kind of died away and doesn't have huge representatives the way the Wahhabi Salafi movement does. So anyway, coming back to this point. So Maqasid became successful. So once anything is successful, everybody wants they want a piece of the cake. So the Salafiyya today, the Wahhabi Salafis, and I don't say this to disrespect them, but let's just be objective. If you are Wahhabi Salafi, that's what you are. I don't mean that as a disrespectful term, but you are Wahhabi Salafi, and I'm saying that to differentiate them from Muhammad Abdu and these people who were the original Salafi. So these were the Wahhabi Salafis that you have today, and they are a spectrum. I accept that. You've got some who ain't that bad, and you've got some who are hardcore and whatever. So it is what it is, as Yusuf al-Khattab said. So people today, everybody wants to claim maqasid. But don't be fooled, people. Do not be fooled. When Wahhabi Salafis today claim maqasid, they do not believe in it the way people of reason believe in, the way the true people of maqasid believe in maqasid. Because what was the purpose of teaching maqasid? The purpose was to say that in each day and age, Islam ought to reflect the objectives of the Sharia. This is important. Now what they're simply saying is that Islam has objectives. Oh yeah, of course we believe in objectives, but the objectives were the objectives of the 7th century Arabia, and since this view today doesn't match those objectives, this is misuse of maqasid. No, it isn't. That is ridiculous. It is not the misuse of maqasid. You have simply, what you're doing is just a false claim to maqasid. They teach maqasid dogmatically, so they have to teach it because it's become too widespread. So they say, oh yeah, Imam Shatibi was a legend. They have to call him a legend because everybody calls him a legend. And then they'll say, yeah, we see. So there was a Salafi scholar in the UK recently made a post saying, oh, people are misusing maqasid. They're using maqasid to destroy Islam. You think, look, with all due respect, brother, right? You're a Wahhabi Salafi. You don't even fundamentally believe in maqasid. You just believe in them dogmatically, in saying, yes, the Sharia had maqasid. Are we allowed to use them? No. We just stick with whatever was the 7th century maqasid. The whole purpose of having maqasid is so it's interactionable. It's that there's interaction. Maqasid was not meant to be dogma. It was not meant to be, hey, here's another belief. Islam has maqasid, memorize it. That was not the purpose. These were tools. This is why I said previously, this is like how some people have said the treachery of maps. Okay, or the treachery of images. There's actually a very famous painting which is called the treachery of images. And it's a painting, a French painting of a pipe, which says, this is not a pipe. Because it's a picture of a pipe. And that's important, and that's the saying that the map is not the territory. You see, to say, oh yes, we embrace maqasid as dogma, defeats the purpose, because it's a tool to use. So it's like saying, you're allowed to have a picture of a hammer and a screwdriver and a photograph of it, but you're not allowed to have a hammer and a screwdriver and to use them. So you're only allowed to have a photograph of it. And yes, we respect the photograph and we respect the object. Yeah, but it's a photo of an object. It's not, you're not even giving me the object. And they're like saying, well, duh, nobody gives it. So this is the understanding of maqasid. So when this scholar said people are using maqasid to say, oh, there should be no khilafah, and I think he's referring to Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya and Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, please behave. Behave, Sheikh, behave. Right. First of all, khilafah is not a ritual. It's empire. Empire. That's all it is. It's a system of saying when Muslims were there, they should rule. We are not in the age of empires. So it's absurd trying to call to an empire. Nobody's going to set up an empire in this century. It doesn't work like that. You know, we're post empires. We're post an imperial age. So okay, that's the first thing. Secondly, the person associated that they say that we don't need a khilafah, that's because Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya said that, look, the main thing is that Islam wanted Muslims to be governed. So if today you are governed in a country, a nation, that will take the place of the word khilafah. It's the same thing. Islam doesn't care as long as there is rule and order. What it wants is for you to have just governors, for you to have upright and upstanding presidents and prime ministers. It wants there to be justice. It wants people to have rights. Whether you want to call them prime minister or khalifa or amir or wali or sultan, or call them whatever the hell you want, but have justice. This is, that, what's the famous saying, that let justice prevail should the heavens collapse. I mean, even if the heavens should collapse, but anyway, I forgot the Latin to it. So the thing is that this is what, so, and he said that they're trying to call, do away with the khilafah, and what they're saying is that they're doing away with Muslim unity. That is nonsense. Unity has nothing to do with a country. It's nothing to do with a country. It's to do with faith and humanity, the brotherhood of humanity and the brotherhood of Islam. Right? It is, you can be my brother, and you can be from China, you can be from Africa, you can be from Europe, you can, and yes, we will have the family of humanity, and we may have a greater bond as well of faith. So not only humanity, but faith may unite us as well. And that is a unity of faith. It does not mean we need a one king, sultan to rule under us, and now we've got unity. For God's sake, do not abuse these terms. To say, people are using maqasid to say we don't need khilafah, and therefore saying we don't need unity. How absurd is that? So just to clarify that, okay, people. Enough said. Boy, have I taken enough time today. Right. You can be from Small Layth. No idea what that question is. Loans, I've answered that before. Yes, you can take loans, people. Right. I've given a much more detailed explanation previously. So you can, inshallah, refer to that. What a session, huh? What a session. God damn. You know what? I might have to start taking some pre-workouts before having these sessions. Right. So, people, stay tuned. Oh, and before I forget, I will be part of this retreat that stays over in Shropshire. I've shared a poster of it. I will share a video of it as well. There will be other scholars there. Sheikh Adam Kelwick, lovely person, amazing person. Sheikh Abdul Hamid from Leicester, MMA expert, great guy to be with. Many other people. There's going to be huge, like amazing activities. I think things like archery, horse riding, I don't know, all these other, and it's like the venue looks like some kind of castle out of out of Game of Thrones. It looks awesome. So I'm going to be there for, it's the 19th and 20th, I think, that weekend of August. So book that out. It's only £120, and that covers, I think, that does cover everything. Your whole stay, the food, the courses, the activities, and I think you leave on Monday or Sunday. But the post has the details, but it's a 3-day stay. I think it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's it. And it covers everything. So do check that out. Right, it'll be awesome to meet up with you. I'm going to be checking the venue when I'm there, and if it is great, I'll be booking it for some of our future retreats as well. If you're on Facebook, which you should be if you're watching this, god damn it, and you haven't liked my public page, like the goddamn page, people. and if you haven't shared it, right, Vikings, alright. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. If you're on Snapchat, you can add me. Right, it's Malm 2014, MALM 2014. Twitter, you can add me at that handle. Otherwise, take very good care of yourselves, people. Wa subhanallahi wa ta'ala amma yasifun. Wa afdalu salat wa salam ala al-qa'il al-mamnoon. Al-Madinata khayrun lahum law kanu ya'lamun. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.